I hope everyone got to meet some people in their region. Again, thank you for bearing with us while we figure out Teams technology. It's difficult at times. Yeah, so I hope you were able to learn something from your fellow Explore the Coast grantees. And you're going to have even more opportunity to learn from your fellow grantees because we have two discussions coming up. And one will be on sustainability and scalability. And the next will be on meaningful partnerships and building trust within your community. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with Black Surf Santa Cruz. So I'll hand it over to Erin to go ahead and introduce our speaker. And we have the slide pulled up. Great.
Great. Thank you, Sheree. All right. So first up, we're going to have, we're very lucky to have Bella Bonner of Black Surf Santa Cruz speak to us. Bella Bonner is the founder and executive director of Black Surf Santa Cruz. She is a longtime Santa Cruz resident, social entrepreneur, visionary, and award-winning change maker working to bridge the community. In 2020, Bella founded Black Surf Santa Cruz as a continuation of her thriving community organizing efforts, which included several paddle outs and protests in support of Black Lives Matter. Black Surf Santa Cruz's Explore the Coast project promotes physical, spiritual, emotional, and communal wellness for members of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and people of color, and other communities historically excluded from the sport of surfing through various educational programs, multi-week and single-day surf and ocean relationship building lessons, and an annual liberation paddle out, which happens every year in Santa Cruz. If you're around that area, I encourage you to check it out. Bella, you're up.
Sweet. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. I am also very grateful to learn I'm not the only person experiencing tech issues this morning. So just spreading that love. But yeah, I chose this slide because I wanted to talk about Black Surf Santa Cruz program growth over the last 5 years. So we are a small nonprofit that was founded in 2020 and have experienced a tremendous amount of growth thanks to community support and also the support of funders. And so I'm excited to talk about the ways we have scaled and the ways we have built in to sustain our organization. So from the very beginning, we are an organization that started in 2020 when there was a ton of momentum and energy around supporting and funding BIPOC and Black-led organizations. And so our team came in from the very beginning and was like, how can we create this sustainability for the times in the future when there isn't this much momentum and energy supporting or initiatives supporting, just because we know how things kind of swing. And so our organization from the very beginning created intentional infrastructure to support growing and scaling and being here for the long haul. It was really important to us to not be a fleeting idea or initiative. And so off top, our organization hired staff. Our board of directors intentionally invested in hiring myself as the executive director and really wanted to use the energy that started our organization to create reserves and funds off top. So we, in our first year of operation, created what we call a What the Fund. And essentially it's just starting at 3-month reserves to 6-month to 9-month to 12-month. Again, really using the energy that sustained and created us to propel us and hold us up during times when we have to move a little bit leaner. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that was really important. But also, as the founder and executive director, I really wanted to flatten the structure because it's not quite possible to grow when everything and ideas are living in one person's head. And so creating systems and processes and procedures to really document what's working and what isn't working. So we very early on invested in creating a curriculum to bring on volunteer coaches. So I didn't grow up surfing. I had actually never surfed before starting this organization. And so off top, that was something that I wasn't going to be able to hold. And so we initially really built in, how can we bring on volunteer instructors, but how can we bring on folks that are able to hold the through line of the vision, which is quality over quantity, and also people who can really stay mission centered and focused on our our organization and our values. And so we created a curriculum to train what started as 12 coaches and has now grown to 15 volunteer coaches who all have decided to stay on with us year over year. And so being able to build systems to not only train these coaches, but also to have a culture that makes people want to stay and continue to support the work that you're doing, creating pipelines for participants to move into volunteer roles. And we're now seeing some of our participants who had never coached becoming volunteer coaches or volunteers, and being able to pass that culture on to new people that we're bringing on. But it really was important to us to stay focused and rooted on our why. And so you can see the growth in this graph going from 2020 to 2024. And nearly all of our systems and structures reflect this upward trend. So each year our budget went up in a way that kind of mirrors this. We had to find more sustainable funding. So it really was about creating lasting partnerships with organizations year over year to help keep us focused on the quality versus the quantity. And so that's been a huge, huge help for us. Year over year, we've also seen staffing go from just one, which was myself, and go up by about a half time every year. So we went from one full-time to a 1.5 full-time to 2 year over year. And so creating systems and goals that mirror where you want to go has been very helpful for us as well. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you so much, Bella. That was great. I'm sure you all have lots of questions for Bella about this, but we're going to ask that you save them until we get to our discussion section. So if something came up, feel free to maybe write it down so you can remember to ask it later on in the meeting when the discussion section comes up. So now I'm going to hand it over to Irvin, who's going to introduce our next speaker from Justice Outside.
Great, thank you, Cherie. So joining us from Justice Outside is Efrain Chavez Delgado. Efrain Chavez Delgado is the Director of Grant Making of Justice Outside. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Management at UC Davis. He has worked as an outdoor educator, food justice program coordinator, and community organizer. At Justice Outside, Efrain continues his work to build capacity with local community. He helped pilot a program to subgrant Conservancy Explore the Coast funds to community partner, which brought a total of 2,000 participants to coastal locations across California. Through the Justice Outside sub-block grant program, organizations who do not have the capacity to apply for or manage a state grant was supported throughout a robust outreach and selection process and technical assistance to deliver their projects. All right, please welcome Efrain.
Hey, Ruben. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Yeah, my name's Efrain, calling in from ancestral Tongva land in the greater Los Angeles area. Quick shout out and kind of like weave things in the narratives that me and Bella have been able to share or going to share. Bella's actually also a recipient of Justice Outside funds, separate from ETC, but we've been in partnership for several years now. And one of the shining examples of how a grant making intermediary like Justice Outside can play a role in increasing access to the coast. And so quick context, Justice Outside, while we do direct programming, my role is actually on in our intermediary funding capacity. I don't take kids out to the coast. I do miss it a lot. I take my 3-year-old, but my role is really figuring out how to move money from different pots, different organizations, and make them more actionable and easier to access. The way we've done that, Irvin kind of alluded to a little bit with our ability to provide technical assistance in applying for funds, whether it be through the state, federal government, private foundations, etc. We kind of fundraise ourselves and then divert it down to community members on the ground and do our best to kind of be a buffer, if you will, in a lot of maybe more of the technical, burdensome administrative tasks that need to be done to manage grants. In many cases, we're funding organizations on the ground who are maybe starting at the very inception of their initiatives and efforts, and so capacity is limited. And so I think one of the ways we support folks to be sustainable and to be able to scale is providing a lot of technical assistance at the front end of their growth, by being like a high touch point funding supporter. We have grant making managers who roughly have a 1 to 30, 1 to 40 ratio from manager to grantee, which is pretty small relative to other funding institutions who have funding ratios between a program officer and grantees of upwards of 50 to 100 relationships, which makes it really difficult to provide high touch point, high frequency capacity building offerings. Beyond just like the initial application for funds, we also fundraise separately with, so it can be no cost to our grantee partners, capacity building offerings. So they can get coaching, access to coaching, one-on-one consultations, live facilitations for a variety of topics, including like fundraising, program development, and evaluation. We know that money is great to kind of get initiatives and organizations stabilized on the financial sense, but the hard skill sets also need to be kind of like invested in so they can do work beyond just the dollars. And so we do our best to curate capacity building offerings on an annual basis that's derived from grantee interest surveys. They let us know which topics they're most interested in, and we do our best to kind of source external third-party facilitators to provide that support. Let's see. We also kind of do our best to embed networking opportunities. We know working in the nonprofit world and just in an attempt to kind of access additional diverse funds, a lot of things kind of hinge on relationships. And so we do our best to have regional events that are either in person or virtual as much as possible. Bella actually was able to spend time with Justice Outside just last week in Philadelphia. We had our biannual conference, Unite and Ignite. We convened maybe roughly 200-ish attendees of all folks from the general outdoor and environmental sector, funders, policy advocates, et cetera, just so folks can really rub shoulders with each other, share space, and share as many resources as possible that they could then take home and actualize to be able to improve their local initiatives and then their more local and regional ecosystems of outdoor coastal advocates. Let's see, I think as an intermediary, one thing we also do really well that I believe supports scale and sustainability is providing general operating funds as much as possible. Of course, with the Explore the Coast grants, there's like a slight difference where we do have like specific program outcomes. Irving mentioned the 2,000 participant outcome, which we have been able to hit with our folks. And it's taken a lot of like technical assistance and coaching up, if you will, when we engage with these partners to really identify what's a manageable goal. We don't want folks to really be sticking their neck out too much if it's not something they can realistically do without completely exhausting themselves, because we know a lot of people, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color, when there's funding opportunities come they're far and in between. And sometimes folks will just take whatever is available at the expense of their own personal health and sustainability. And so we do our best to kind of coach them up in negotiating and identifying what's something you can tangibly and feasibly do that doesn't come in at the expense of you and your small group of leaders. And general operating funds does that because that allows them to pay the lights, pay their nonprofit status, fiscal sponsorship fees if they have them. I think a lot of times people get really hung up on just getting as many grants as they can, even if they're not general operating, and then they end up being in a situation where they've grown too much and don't have enough to cover overhead, if you will, and then puts them in a really precarious situation. And I think I'm reaching the end of my time. I would be remiss just to mention the actual grantees doing the work on the ground. Through these funds, we've been supporting Intersection Surf. They do a lot of surfing for Black folks in the greater LA area and greater BIPOC community. Brothers on the Rise is in the Bay Area. I encourage you all to check them out. They do a lot of work. And then lastly, Northern Chumash Tribal Council, also doing a really amazing indigenous community, cultural preservation, land stewardship, etc. And actually, we also work with the Sea League, another organization that supports Black, Indigenous, and people of color to get into surfing They are out in the Santa Barbara area. Really, really awesome. I believe Bella has some degree of connection with them as they're in the similar kind of thematic realm. But thanks so much, y'all. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Efrain. That was amazing. We're gonna go ahead and move into our next topic. Again, I want to remind everyone we're saving questions for the discussion section. So if any questions came to your mind during this presentation, please write them down, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask later. So we're going to go ahead and move into meaningful partnerships, building trust within the community. And again, I'm going to hand it to Irvin to introduce our speakers.
Great, thanks, Cherie. Joining us from the Grand African Methodist Episcopal Church is Jacqueline Cochran and Pastor Tim. Jacqueline Cochran is the volunteer director of the Kirkland Academy for Excellence program. She has more than 20 years of experience in managing state and federal grants. She has worn many hats to serve her community, which has earned her an unofficial title amongst her peers as a community operator. She has been with the Grand African Methodist Episcopal Church all her adult life and saw the founding of the community-based science program, Kirkland Academy for Excellence in 2013, where youths throughout South Central Los Angeles are supported to access the outdoors. Also with us from the Grand African Methodist Episcopal Church is Pastor Tim. Pastor Tim has been with African Methodist Episcopal Church for 26 years. He has served both our country and his community throughout the years. And at Fisherman, Pastor Tim, together with Jacqueline, expanded the Grand African Kirkland Academy for Excellence outdoor program to the coast and launched their Explore the Coast project, Watts to Water, in 2023. Over the year, Watts to Water has brought over 100 participants and their families from the Watts and greater South Central Los Angeles community to the coast for day trips. Please welcome Pastor Tim and Jacqueline.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Sister Jackie. I think you got the first one there.
I certainly do. Thank you, Pastor. I'm going to talk about just for 1 minute. We're doing a tag team, so I've timed myself out. Trust in our community is equated with safety. Our parents want quality learning opportunities for their children, but first they want a safe and secure place. The Kirkland Academy for Excellence began in 2008 with an after-school tutoring program, and we enlisted children mainly by word of mouth. We also distributed flyers to nearby schools. Parents saw the program and through word of mouth, had children return year after year. In 2013, we began our science camp, and students from the tutoring program participated, but we also received students from the community and nearby schools. We knew because of the increased enrollment that parents realized it was a safe place for their children that strongly focused on STEAM topics, and the science camp expanded significantly until the COVID pandemic. In 2023, we were awarded the Explore the Coast grant and launched Watts to Water. We saturated the community with attractive flyers, but the strongest partnership again developed with connecting with other churches through word of mouth in our area. Those connections came from incidental contact with people from those churches, and we began to develop leadership in those churches, and they provided a coordinator to help with our planning and implementation of Watts to Water. Pastor?
Oh, all right. Yeah. When it comes to our biggest challenge for building trust with the community, one of the things I'd have to say is not so much building trust, but maintaining trust. And I think through maintaining trust, trust is built. What we have done is the program that we offer when we get together at the beginning of our program and we talk about what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing it and what people can expect. When they get there, that's what they receive. Nothing gets canceled on them. You know, they don't show up and nobody's there, but we ensure that everything that we tell you we're going to do, we do. And in that maintaining the trust in our program, we see people come back over and over again and invite others to come back as well. Also, when we look at our community, as far as how we define it, we look at the surrounding community there around the South Los Angeles area. We have communities of faith that includes all different types, not just AME like we are, but we have Baptists, we have Church of God in Christ, we have non-denominational. Anyone who wants to come out and be a part of the Watts to Water program is more than welcome. And also the South Central area, focusing predominantly on the Watts area. So those that it would be our focus demographic area. And I will turn over the rest to Sister Jackie.
Okay, and I want to talk about the value of our partnerships. There are two different types of partnerships that we consider valuable. One would be the human resources that have allowed our program to develop and grow, and the other are partnerships with businesses throughout the community and elected officials who represent us. In 2008, when we began our tutoring program, we simply asked friends, families, and members of our church to help out. Our focus was on plan, ask, and thank. We planned our program, we asked for volunteers and explained our passionate vision, and people began to volunteer. As people joined the group, they solicited family and friends to join. Over the past 17 years, we've acquired volunteers from other churches, both AME and other denominations. We thank our volunteers with a special luncheon, and they get a special t-shirt, camp t-shirt, that they seem to value. We could not operate any of our programs, including Watts to Water, without key volunteers. And how do we structure meaningful partnerships between the participants? We began our Watts to Water program by requiring a special spaghetti dinner, and we had over 200 people attend the dinner. It was quite interesting. We took the children out and they had an activity together, and the families for the first time met each other. They picked up their t-shirts just like the one Pastor and I are wearing. They wear this t-shirt on all of their events. They're divided into special groups, and I brought the lanyards to show you. There are different color groups, and each group has a leader. When they check in for the events, they go to their group leader to get their tickets and their lunches and things like that. Well, we found out that the subgroups by color began to form friendships, and we found that families within those groups explored the venues together. And I even have a picture of some parents sitting and talking when we were at Catalina as their children played on the playground. And so we feel that the value of those partnerships between the parents is really important. And that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Pastor Tim and Sister Jackie. That was really insightful. And we're going to move into our last, but certainly not least, presentation of the day. So we have, joining us from Outdoor Outreach is Sunny Chang, who is the Senior Youth Programs Manager. With over 20 years of experience in youth development, Sunny oversees program quality and risk management across a range of outdoor education initiatives. A graduate of UC Santa Cruz with degrees in sociology and wilderness therapy, she's led countless adventure-based programs focused on resilience and access for underserved youth. This year, Outdoor Outreach was awarded an Explore the Coast grant to connect 500 San Diego youth with transformative coastal experience. Welcome, Sunny, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. Very excited to be here and to meet each and every one of y'all. A quick introduction to myself, and then I'll go into our work at Outdoor Outreach. So Sunny, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Youth Programs Manager. And a little bit about my background is I've dedicated my professional career as well as personal goals to supporting youth mental and physical well-being while utilizing the outdoors and the connection with nature. And so it was definitely my delight to cross paths with Outdoor Outreach back in 2006. So I've been with the organization for about 16, 17 years, and have just seen tremendous growth internally as well as externally with our community partnerships and the relationships that we've built. So a little bit about our work at Outdoor Outreach. Our mission is to connect youth to the transformative powers of the outdoors as a space to build resilience in the face of challenges and confidence in their power to make a difference. Our vision is an outdoors for all that inspires and sustains healthy and vibrant communities. Since 1999, Outdoor Outreach has provided opportunities for more than 20,000 San Diego youth to explore their world, cultivate belonging, and discover what they're really capable of. We've operated school-based youth development programs since our founding, and then began strategically partnering with social service agencies and other youth-supported organizations back in 2018. While the majority of our youth participants come from low-income schools, we also focus recruitment efforts on system-impacted youth through close working relationships with existing youth service models. And then that allows us to provide unique and meaningful outdoor experiences for youth impacted by the juvenile justice pathway, child welfare, youth impacted by workforce development and homelessness, refugee resettlement, children's hospitals, and behavior and mental health programs. Our model was developed in a sense to respond to the challenges in traditional mental health treatments, as well as access for our youth to get to these outdoor spaces. And so for the past 25 years, our organization has continued to evolve our programs to address the challenges and needs of the youth that we serve. And in that time, many studies on mental health prevention, early intervention, and treatment have validated Outdoor Outreach's approach. In 2019, a study estimated that every dollar spent on creating and maintaining park trails can save almost $3 in healthcare alone, a benefit that is being denied to the most economically distressed communities. Our work is also inspired by studies to show how spending time in nature enables people to overcome mental fatigue and restores the capacity to direct attention. And so I'm sure many of y'all here know, being outdoor enthusiasts or outdoor supporters, that there is a direct correlation to our health and well-being and being in the outdoors and finding those connections. So wanted to make a particular note here that 74% of communities of color live in nature-deprived areas, compared with just 23% of white communities. And 70% of low-income communities across the country live in nature-deprived areas. For this reason, Outdoor Outreach continues to engage over 89% BIPOC youth to engage them in spaces from which they have historically been excluded and experienced barriers to access. And we address these barriers to safe and accessible outdoor recreation directly by providing transportation, entry fees, equipment, food while on program, guided instruction at no cost to the participants, and oftentimes very low cost to the schools that we work with, which are primarily Title I schools. And then with every opportunity to hike, bike, climb, kayak, surf, explore the world, they can cultivate belonging and discover what they're really capable of. For many young people, our programs could be their first time going to the ocean, riding a bike, or even just feeling comfortable out on the trail or out at the beach. So our programs are designed to be welcoming, safe spaces for young people who may not have otherwise tried a new activity or experienced joy of being outdoors. We have several different programs. One particularly is a leadership program where it is a workforce development where we bring in our participants. They apply to become a cohort. We serve about 300 hours of outdoor development, environmental health education, leadership, and civic engagement training. And then once the participants are graduated from our leadership program, they then have a program to an opportunity to either be hired onto our staff to then become staff members, or continue with other government agencies like national parks and state parks to become interns and to pursue their path in the outdoors. And I will stop there.
Great. Thank you so much, Sunny. Again, I think everybody probably has a lot of questions for our speakers, and we will get to those in one moment. we're actually going to move into a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 11:55. When we return, we'll move into our panel discussion where you'll have the opportunity to ask our speakers some questions, and then we'll have another networking session following that. So enjoy your 5-minute break, come back at 11:55, and think of some questions you want to ask our speakers. All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're back, could you go ahead and react with thumbs up or turn your camera on just so we can see if we've got people coming back? Wonderful. Perfect. Okay, so I hope you had a nice break. We are going to move into our panel discussion, and we're going to start with some questions from Coastal Conservancy staff, and then we'll open it up to the audience to ask some questions. We would prefer it if you could raise your hand when you're ready to ask your question. But if it's easier for you to put it into the chat, you can do that as well. And one of the Conservancy staff will ask your question for you. So I'll hand it over to Irvin to start with our first question for our panelists.
Great, thank you, Cherie. So yeah, just to kickstart ourselves with some questions on the sustainability and scalability topic. The first question I have for our panelists is, if you had unlimited funding, what program component would you add?
That's a good question. Maybe we would expand our program. We've often talked about overnight experiences, but those are very expensive, but sometimes very valuable for families to spend an overnight time in some of the venues. And so I think if we had it, we would probably expand to an overnight experience.
I love that. I have a few things that come to mind because I'm a big dreamer over here. But I do see our programs as hopefully like a journey back to the water for some folks. So I would say free swim lessons would be a huge one. And also more access to transportation for folks to enjoy our programs beyond just Santa Cruz, or who are living beyond just Santa Cruz as well. And then one more, because big dreamer, I think it would be awesome if there could be gear lockers in Santa Cruz, local to surf breaks, where folks can come and kind of like share boards and be able to return them without having to deal with transportation and navigating a big board.
I'll tag on to Bella's and dream big. And this was a big question. If you asked our staff members, they would want a rock wall at our office. But I'll address some of the barriers that we've experienced over the years. And obviously, cost is one of those major barriers. And so snowboarding is one of the activities that is dear to my heart because it has changed the trajectory of my life. Being a part of the mountain and the snow and experiencing that sport. However, it is a very costly activity in which that we have not found access to get into. So our resorts are very expensive, transportation is very far, and to gear up our students is also quite pricey. So if we were able to dream big, I would bring back snowboarding. And then very similar to what Bella mentioned, some of the other challenges, if we had the funding, would be access to transportation. So moving the students from point A to point B, getting out to the coast, as well as providing the gear and just addressing all of those kind of hurdles of getting them to do those activities.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think something that I would like to add to the work that Justice Southside generally supports is more From a funding perspective, more hard commitments for multi-year funding that doesn't require reapplications every year. I think that would relieve a lot of organizations and small groups of people from having to put in so much time to just get money every year. So that'd be one. On the programming side, I think it'd be really cool to have more money available for what I think is also a really expensive activity, which is like open ocean, coastal citizen science and advocacy programming. I think there's a lot of high costs with like the equipment itself, contracting scientists who can kind of like teach up the community. And I think I have seen a lot of potential with citizen science programs that can kind of like funnel and directly impact local politics or policies, rather. So I think I'd want to see more of that.
Great. Those were all wonderful ideas that I would love to incorporate in our funding if we had unlimited funds to grant. So yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Next question, also along the sustainability and scalability topic. How do you deal with shifting funding landscape? This is like planning for years and how do you plan for years when funding is low?
That's when you really need to rely on partners. And if you all can assemble your resources, so maybe one can pay for the transportation, one can pay for the instructors, one can pay for the equipment, and you have to combine. Or that's when you tap into more volunteers when the funding is low, is what we find. But yes, we are in challenging times from here on out for a little bit. And we know that Parks and Recreation funding is usually the first to go. Thank goodness we live in the state of California. And so California is still trying to keep a lot of the stuff alive, but federal funding is what they rely on too.
Mhm.
And we've also used funding from city and county sources, as well as volunteer and private donations, all of that together. We've used a budget to keep our program running, even when one of the sources may be lean or non-existent. We're able to still continue. And we may have to adjust the program just a little bit here and there, what one fishing trip vice two or something like that, but it does not preclude us going out and participating in the program.
Yeah, I think very similarly for Black Surf Santa Cruz. As I mentioned before, like really building reserves for when you're not in a moment of funding being low and when resources are moving more freely, having those conversations proactively so you're not in a position to have to be reacting as things are shifting. It's kind of a part of the plan or the structure. That's been really successful for us, as well as really tapping into our network and our community, whether that be through volunteers, as you mentioned, but also not being afraid to ask our community for support and go back to really that grassroots mobilizing as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, just a reminder, this is our panel discussion session. So these questions are open for our panelists to share, and we can jump into more of our open sharing and networking later in our agenda. So do we have any audience member questions for our panelists related to the sustainability and scalability topic?
I guess I have a question. I guess it can fit into sustainability. What is the future looking like for the Coastal Conservancy and continuing this grant funding that they have had? Like, what is happening with the Conservancy and their funding mechanisms?
Yeah, Tatiana, thank you. That's a great question. For funding related to the Conservancy, we can maybe address that in our Q&A session at the end of our workshop. We have like a dedicated like 10-15 minutes at where you can connect with Conservancy staff to learn more about our funding. Okay, if we don't have any audience member question for our panelists, I will pass it on to Erin, who will continue with our panel discussion.
Great, thanks, Irvin. Yeah, so I can ask the next couple questions. Again, Bella, Jackie, Pastor Tim, Sunny, Ephraim, when I ask the question, just whoever feels moved, go ahead and speak to it. So we're going to ask now a couple questions on the topic of meaningful partnerships. And again, these are open to everybody because we know you all have a lot to say on both these subjects. So the first question is, how has building trust with community changed over the last 5 years?
Well, I spoke to that in our presentation. 5 years, I always say, when was pandemic? When was the pandemic? And then I gauge my perceptions on that. And so just before the pandemic, we had established partnerships that just basically helped with transportation, bringing people in for our various science programs, for our science camp, which is not funded. It's funded by volunteers and donations. And then right at that time, we were just simply going out into the community, trying to find children in the parks, at the schools, just trying to find children and to bring them in. So at that time, we were just really out in the community. And now, after the pandemic, technology did ramp up. It seemed that people were more on Zoom, and we could go on to Zoom and go into other meetings and talk about our program and to promote it that way. So I think over the last 5 years, we've gone from more hands-on, one-on-one to more of a technical aspect of recruiting people and children for our program. That's our biggest challenge, is getting more people into our program, more children into our program.
Any other thoughts on that question?
Yeah.
Yes, Sunny, go for it.
We could hop in. Very similar to Sister Jacqueline, what she just shared. Recruitment often is one of the biggest challenges for community groups, youth groups. And when I look at the question about community, though, community is such a vast range, right? So starting at the ground level would be our students, our youth. And building that trust, yeah, it's ground level. We are in the schools, we are tabling, we're at community events, and speaking with families and youth. And then that's still challenging, right? It takes a lot of staff effort. It takes a lot of time, with sometimes not that much results too. So it just depends. But one of the ways that we do build that community trust is I believe right now our percentage is about 75% of our staff are past participants. So they were students that were on our programs, have joined, have learned, had fun, connections, and then decided to move forward with either their first job or they graduated college and they came back. And so now they're giving more back towards their own community. And so they already have that connection to these schools and other organizations. Now at a different level too is a partner community, right? And so that trust, and I see a lot of our community partners here in this meeting, and it really is this synergy of helping each other. I remember one of our directors sharing that we're not we're not all fighting for the crumbs. We are working together to ask for more, a bigger piece of the pie. And so that's really resonated with me. And I think our collaborations with community entities are just so valuable and so important. And then going even above that would be then our government collaborations. So we've definitely been supported quite a bit by, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California State Parks. It's just a whole list of folks that have really been supportive of our work. And I think over the years, we've cultivated that trust at all different levels. And that's definitely a piece of building that trust and sustainability for our organization.
Great. I think that actually leads really well into another question that we wanted to ask, which is for each of you, for your organizations, what is your most valuable partnership? And can you speak to how that partnership was formed?
I can start with this one. Definitely a little biased, but I really want to give Justice Outside a plug right now. I would say they are one of our biggest partnerships that has really supported us from the very beginning, as Ephraim mentioned, really supporting that ground level formation of an organization. And I would say I consider that partner to be extremely valuable because of the trust that they put into Black Surf and my leadership from the very beginning. I would say that funding and funder partnership has been very trust-based in that they really believed in the mission and vision of Black Surf Santa Cruz and have invested in multiple ways in going beyond just that funder grantee partnership level, but I really see them as a true partner, which I also find to be true of our partnership with Coastal Conservancy and Explore the Coast as well. Being able to be reached out to for opportunities like this and to be seen in the work that Black Surf Santa Cruz has done really speaks a partnership that feels more level playing ground than the hierarchy of what we're really used to in funder and grantee relationships and dynamics. And so both of those two, I would say, have been reflected in the way that Black Surf is really sought out as a true partner in the work and thought leader in the space as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bella. I appreciate the shout out to Justice Outside. We do our best to make access to funds as equitable and supportive as possible, and we also learn just as much, I think, being in partnership with folks like yourselves. I think for us, if I had to kind of speak to one of our more valuable relationships in the realm of ocean and coastal work, Explore the Coast has been wonderful. The SEC, but I think on a broader scale or larger scale, two partnerships that have really helped us mobilize funds for ocean and coastal access is the Ocean Protection Council, a sister agency of the SEC, and then OceanKind, a private funder that also does ocean justice funding. Those two partnerships have been really key. They're two of our largest grants, several $100,000 a year. And both of them, largely, we've been able to push them out onto the ground as general operating support, which is a really, really big deal. I think they've allowed us to really be as intersectional in our interpretation and investment of initiatives on the ground that are predominantly led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which really means a lot when we're working with larger entities, especially those who are still functioning off of the legacy of really rigid funding parameters and structures, protocols, and whatnot. And they've been really awesome partners in us kind of mitigating and eliminating a lot of those bureaucratic components to funding. Well, one of them, Ocean Protection Council, formed to key in on the aspect of the question about how it was formed. It's a really great connection to how relationships play a really big role in the way money is able to move a little more freely and equitably. We didn't even actually, as an organization, apply to be the founding or pilot administrator for the small grants program with the Ocean Protection Council. We were nominated by one of the I think OPC had like an advisory council of sorts. Jose Gonzalez, I believe, was serving on there. Currently, equity officer at I believe the East Bay Regional Office. Hollis, I see you nodding your head. You probably know the name of the office. He used to work for Latino Outdoors. But really great partnership and trust he kind of like bestowed on Justice Outside, and he was an advocate in a strategy meeting, threw our name into candidacy, and they reached out to us. And so I think like the strong relationship we had with Jose kind of extended over to the relationship and good word that he put in for us to be the initial administrator of those funds. So shout out to him, and the power of relationships and connections. With Oceankind, they were a private funder, really secretive when we first engaged them. We're actually an anonymous giver. We like to think that through the relationship-driven approach that we had with them, which has now led to maybe close to 3 or 4 years of ongoing support. They've pivoted into being a public funder. They used to be under the secrecy or a shield of another organization, but now they're kind of like full on out in public, and leaning into ocean justice equity work. And they were just really willing to engage with us in private conversations when we were initially shepherding that relationship. And they've been really amazing partners as well. They initially kind of were our strong foothold in California and the West Coast for ocean work, were some of our key partners that allowed us to kind of build that reputation to land like the ETC and the OPC funding. And now they've been flexible enough to allow us to support ocean work across the country, like on the East Coast, now that we have more funding on the West Coast, which is really, really amazing. So I'll say those two.
Thanks.
And I was thinking about this, and I don't want to pick any favorites. I definitely appreciate all of our partners, but a personal passion of mine is the justice diversion programs. And so through partnerships like or grants through the Explore the Coast, we're able to bring some of our youth from the juvenile community schools, JCCS, or National Conflict Resolution, bring these youth to the coast to experience these coastal experiences as well as outdoor experiences, and we're able to see the growth within them. To then we are part of their plan of graduation. And so for some of the youth to be able to go through this program and then I get to witness their graduation, it is absolutely amazing. And so I do want to shout out, this grant has allowed us to provide all of these opportunities to all of our partners. And the special spot for me is the juvenile justice programs. And so that allows us to do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then Sister Jacqueline and Pastor Tim, I know you guys spoke to this a little bit in your presentation, but just to highlight it, since some of these partnerships mentioned have been more organizations, you both mentioned that your partnerships have been with actual families in the community and other churches. And so I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to that, because it provides some contrast of the kinds of partnerships that help these programs.
Right.
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick, and I'm sure Sister Jackie probably can add on to it. One of the things that we take advantage of, at least as far as our denomination, we have um, 52 churches in Southern California. And like our church just hosted an annual conference where all those churches came together. And so when we have, venues like that, we are able to take and promote our program to not just our church, but it goes out to all 52 churches who then they can take and, share it with others. We take our flyer, we send it out across the emails to all the pastors in those 52 churches, and we encourage them to share it in their communities. So we end up catching not just the Watts area, but we also catch churches. We go up to um, I mean, everywhere. You figure as far north as Delano and Bakersfield, as far south as San Diego, and everything in between. We catch all those different areas. So that is one thing that allows us to be able to reach out and to touch families, communities, not just in our area, but beyond.
And we really, the partnership with the churches has been just tremendous because we've been able to expand the number of people that we've been able to serve. I was just at another event and talking to this young lady. We happened to be in the same sorority. She had on sorority colors and stuff and a jacket and all. And I talked to her and I said, I was excited about our program. So I started talking about it. And I asked her, did she have a church home? And she said yes. And when she told me where her church was located, it's less than a mile from our church. And so I got excited about it and I told her about this and how we were outreaching and they serve the same community. And so through that partnership, we really almost doubled the number of participants in our program. And one of the young ladies from their church just became a big helper when the families arrived at the venue. She just helped out. And so we brought her on board as part of our operational team. And so now, instead of having to go to that church, I can just call Felicia and say, Felicia, don't forget to call and remind these people. And she's also one of our team leaders. So now she's a family coordinator, and that partnership has expanded. The same way to the north, met a young lady just in talking at Sam's Club. Who'd have thought? And her church is less than a mile north of us. And so I told her about our program, and she has a group home. So we're serving children now who have been, when a child's in a group home, they've experienced some real traumatic things. And for them to come and be able to go to the beach and go to the tide pools and go fishing and find out about the sustainability of fish as a food source and actually take fish home for dinner that night is just, it's amazing to see the children exploring that. And so just by contacting her and knowing that they have a group home, we now get children who have been separated from their family, but they find family. They find brothers and sisters because they get a chance to play and explore. And so those partnerships are really important. And then to Ephraim, this is not bribery, but I want to invite you and your 3-year-old to come and explore the coast with some of our programs since you're in the Los Angeles area. And we'd love to talk to you about ways that we might be able to continue to expand our outreach into the community.
Yeah. And just real quick, just some of the places that we are able, because we're a connectional church, we're able to reach places like Barstow, Blythe, Los Angeles, San Diego, Pasadena, Irvine, Las Vegas, Victorville, El Centro, La Jolla, Norwalk, Oceanside, Lompoc, Long Beach, Valinda, uh, Paris, Monrovia, just to name a few.
All right. Thank you to our panelists. I'm going to move us on because we're reaching the end of our time for this panel discussion, but I encourage everyone, all of our attendees, please reach out to our panelists if you have questions for them or you want to connect with them.